Welcome to Sports Basement's Outside In event. Tonight, we are very excited. Tonight, we have Ted and Laura King, who are both professional athletes, big cyclists. They do a lot of road, they do gravel, they do mountain biking. Ted is a 10-year world tour professional cyclist who raced in the Tour de France twice at the Giro D'Italia. Did I say that correctly?
You got it.
All right. And he's also a two-time Dirty Kanza champion. And Laura is a professional athlete and self-proclaimed endurance sport junkie. They're both now rooted in Vermont with their daughter Hazel, who is making an appearance for us right now. I think she can tell she's made for this.
Yeah.
And Laura's biggest joy, outside of Hazel, obviously, is introducing other women to cycling. So we're going to go through a number of different things today. They are coming to us live from Flagstaff, Arizona, which is pretty big. So we're hoping that weather holds. You never know with that kind of stuff. So we shall see. And let's see here what I'm going to do now. And one more thing, obviously, we're Sports Basement. We're doing our Outside In series every Thursday night at 5:30 p.m. They're all free. We've got some great athletes, experts, all kinds of stuff. Next week, we have the climbing company Metolius who's going to be on here. So we hope you can join us for that, and plenty more to come. So without further ado, let me just spotlight Ted and Laura here and Hazel, and we'll get right into it.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. And one more thing, if you have any questions, by all means, they'd love to answer them. If you could just type them in the chat bar on the side, we'll get to a Q&A right around like 6:15 or so. And we'll make sure we get to all the questions, or as many as we possibly can, which I'm sure there will be a lot because we have some interesting stuff to dive into here. So first off, Ted, Laura, and now Hazel, what have you been up to lately, and how has van life been treating you?
Terrific question. Very appropriate given our location in the past 5 weeks. 5 weeks from yesterday. So Laura and I live in Vermont. We had Hazel at the very beginning of the pandemic. She was born on March 8th, and basically up in our neck of the woods, the world went into lockdown on about the 10th. My family's on the East Coast, so it has been easy to catch up with them and introduce them to Hazel, and Laura's entire family is out in Seattle. So amid a summer that is not totally, well, certainly not normal, typically it's a calendar that's full of a lot of events. All those events are getting canceled for obvious reasons. We purchased this fine van that you see behind us and packed up in about 36 hours and hit the road and drove out to Seattle to meet Laura's whole family. And so we've done that. It'll be about a 7 or 8 week trip in total, and we're on a slow pilgrimage back east, which brings us to beautiful Flagstaff, Arizona.
Awesome. Well, let's go into the van. Seems like the hot topic right now. What van did you go with, and how did you decide on which one you wanted to live out of?
Crazy. That's a great question too, and I'm probably going to say that a lot because I seem to preface a lot of answers that way. We got lucky in a big way. I mean, we put the word out that we were interested in getting a van. A friend of ours, we tried to convince him that he should loan us his van for the summer, but it's a pretty busy summer for RVs and vans. We're surrounded by them right now in this campground. He introduced us to a mutual friend of ours who at that point didn't really realize that he was going to be selling his. So we have a 2014 Mercedes Sprinter van. It's a 144. It's a 2500. It's diesel. And the best part about it, it was already tricked out. The previous owners were cyclists. So it has bed, it has shower, at that point it had room for 3 bikes. And then the way Laura and I operate, we each brought a cyclocross bike, Cannondale Super X's, and we also each brought our Cannondale Scalpel mountain bikes, swap wheel sets, depending if we're going to ride on the road or gravel. And yeah, the thing is, it's got room for Hazel. It's got room for
pack and play. That's where she sleeps.
Yeah.
Not incredibly roomy for 3 people, but it's getting the job done.
We had a recent recommendation that we should get a dog, which I told them was the worst idea of the year. We fit snugly, the 3 of us. So another person or any addition would just be a little bit too tough.
Yeah. It's funny because, I know we've seen like climbers and things that have the van, and it's one thing, right, to fit your climbing gear and, like a 3-person family. It's another thing when you got 3 or 4 bikes with you, right? That takes up a lot more room there.
Big time.
But you guys are doing well. What would be if someone was looking at like doing kind of similar to what you're doing, and they're like, we want to get a van, we want to have space for our bikes in it. What is the one recommendation you would give them for it?
Geez, that is a great one. I would. Here's a funny tip. Do your homework beforehand. Like I said, we packed up in 36 hours. And that was the most busy 36 hours of our life because at the same time we were also putting our house on Airbnb. So it would have been nice to do like a quick weekend trip instead of a 2-month trip. But that would allow you to, figure out how things are going to fit. We did a little bit of modification once we hit the road. I guess the direct answer to your question is practice makes perfect. So you're going to learn how to do it a lot.
Yeah, and just we sought out people, our friends who had vans, and asked them a lot of questions and what they liked and why they looked for what they ended up with, and just tried to glean information from them.
Yeah. I think practice makes perfect is excellent advice for really anything, right?
I did a lot of YouTube research on how to do van life with a baby. That was one thing we didn't have many friends that had advice there, and I don't know how much advice there is other than the sound machine we travel with is really key.
Smart.
Sound machine, kind of like the white noise, helps everyone sleep better and helps her go to sleep when no matter where we are. So that's been helpful.
Well, then here's another qualifier. I said, practice makes perfect. By the time we get home, we might be close to perfect. Like every day is a little bit of a modification. Yeah. So it's that with a big dose of patience. Highly, highly recommend the trip. It's been wild seeing how many RVs and Sprinter vans are on the road and every type of van in between. And we just feel really, really lucky to be out here.
Nice. Hazel agrees.
Hazel totally agrees.
So what's next for you guys? You guys are in Northern Arizona. Are you going anywhere for any big rides? Are you going to looking at any mountain bike rides or gravel rides, any road rides, anything like that?
Well, maybe we should say where we've already been because it's been quite the tour already. We started in Vermont, like we said, and we kind of beelined it for the first 3 days until we got to South Dakota, Spearfish, South Dakota, which I didn't know there was a place that was a great place to stop in South Dakota, but Ted had been out there. It's the home of Quark, which is a sponsor, Power Meter sponsor, and so we had an awesome campsite there and did a quick day or half day of mountain biking. Then we were on to Whitefish, Montana. Sorry, I'm already losing track. Whitefish, Montana, which I think for me was a true highlight. That's a spot somebody just asked best riding so far, and I'd say best all around, just like road, gravel, mountain, and beautiful things to do. Going to the Sun Road is one of the most beautiful rides I've ever done in the U.S. Kind of feels like a European climb. So that was a real highlight. From there, we went to Valley, Idaho, caught up with Rebecca Rush. She showed us around Ketchum, another place that we love to ride bikes, mountain or gravel. And then from there, we finally went to Seattle, which was the main spot that we were aiming for to visit my family. And we did a bit of gravel and road riding there, but the focus was definitely on seeing aunts and uncles and cousins and grandma and grandpa. So we spent a week in Seattle, and then we headed to Hood River, Oregon, where we had a couple of friends that we caught up with and did some mountain biking. What's the name of?
We did Waldo Lake.
Well, that's not in Hood River, but
We went mountain biking and
I was gonna name
River.
where we went mountain biking in River, but I'm already forgetting the name of it. But they're really fun trails. I imagine in spring and fall they're even better when they're a little less. They're pretty dry. But then we headed to further south in Oregon. Yeah, we went to a place called, well, it's the Cascade Lakes region. I didn't know anything about this region. It's at altitude. It's at like 5,000 feet. And spent time in the lake, and then did some great rides, gravel and mountain bike. You were saying we did a route around Waldo Lake.
Mm-hmm.
It was how many miles of single track around the lake?
20
or so. It was fantastic mountain biking. And then we headed to our old home of Marin, Larkspur, and spent some time there. Unfortunately, the fires have been pretty devastating, and so while it was great to catch up with friends, it was a hard place to be outdoor activity wise. So we did decide to kind of press on, and that brought us here to Flagstaff.
Cool. That sounds like quite the adventure.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
That was the up to here. I'll be a little bit more speedy in saying we're going to go to Colorado next, visit friends, family, try to dodge some smoke, which I think is an issue right now. Probably do a visit through Kansas, and then maybe 1 or 2 stops east of there, but basically that's more or less to sleep, and then make it all the way to the Atlantic and hopefully catch up with family over Labor Day week. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. We're going coast to coast to coast.
That's awesome. That's great. Sounds like you're getting logging a lot of miles in there too. I will say too, Laura, I checked out your Instagram, and you guys got some amazing pictures on there too. You can really get a sense of the adventure you're on. Even before this, got some really good riding pics and everything. So, everyone listening, definitely check out Laura's Instagram too if you get a chance as well. I believe it was linked in the Eventbrite page, or if not, it's on Ted's website as well. So it sounds like you guys got some miles in there. So let's get onto bikes. You've been doing a lot of mountain biking over this trip. What have you also mentioned some road stuff too? How did both of you get into gravel riding as opposed to just road riding in the first place?
So my career was on the road. I raced professionally from 2005 to 2015, and retiring from World Tour cycling in 2015, I knew I was coming back to the States. The world was my oyster. I could basically pick where I wanted to live, and I sort of zeroed it down to California, to Colorado, or back home in New England. And I said, if I don't go to California now, I never will. And so went out to California. This is dovetailing your question into a segue of basically how we met. I met Laura the second weekend that I was in California, and basically been inseparable ever since.
On King Ridge, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with.
Fittingly, we met on King Ridge. And so moving to California at that point, I was finished World Tour racing. I had struck up a handful of relationships beginning with Cannondale on this ambassador side of cycling. So I think in that would have been spring of 2016, the word gravel really wasn't what it is now. Certainly the gravel racing wasn't what it is now. I don't think the term existed. I don't think the term pro gravel racer certainly did not exist. It was an ambassador for the sport. It was Cannondale and a handful of other great sponsors saying, we like what you represent. We like your voice over the course of your career. Would you like to keep that in cycling? And so at that point, it was a lot of product launches and pop-up rides. I did a pop-up ride with Sports Basement, and it was a blast, but it has dovetailed into this booming gravel scene. So winning Dirty Kanza that year in 2016 was fortuitous, was a good move on my career trajectory point. I want to get in 2018. I love the competition of gravel, and that's the thing that I'm passionate about, but then even more so, it is the community. It is getting people on bikes. It is getting people happy about bikes. And I feel like gravel is doing that unlike any other facet of cycling that we've certainly seen in our career. So that was my entry. Laura, how'd you get into gravel?
Sure. How did I get into gravel? You know, when I was just telling this story yesterday to a friend that I tried out road race. Well, I come from a triathlon background. I did triathlon for over 12 years, and was getting a little burned out on that. Moved to Marin County, discovered the dirt, discovered mountain biking, and also started participating in the Grasshopper Series. And man, the Grasshopper Series to me really is what struck me, in that I was like, this is the kind of event I'm drawn to. I like that there weren't categories. I like that it was everyone lining up together on the start line. I like that it was longer and harder miles than you would find in a women's road race. And I like the mixed terrain aspect. So yeah, the Grasshopper Series for me were really pivotal in drawing me to kind of, I guess, gravel before it was actually even a category within cycling. You know, it was only a few years later when I started hearing that people were like their companies were making gravel bikes. And then it was just a kind of organic evolution and participating in some other events and meeting Ted and us traveling to different events and just realizing that we love, like Ted said, we love the racing, but we also love the community and we love the lifestyle feel and the adventure feel, and also just, you know, the safety of gravel, feeling a little bit more being off the roads with distracted drivers and getting out there. Those are all elements that we've really been drawn to with the sport.
Awesome. Yeah. All very interesting. I know I've heard really good things about the Grasshopper Series too. It sounds like a really cool vibe. Everyone seems like they're out there for like the best reasons, right?
Yeah.
What are your gravel bikes of choice at right now? Like, what do you prefer to ride on if you're going gravel riding over all the other options out there?
So we are blessed in many ways, not least of which we are blessed in bikes. I think my favorite bike of 2020 is Cannondale Topstone Carbon Lefty, which, for those of you who have followed my exploits this year, on Dirty Kanza weekend, which was final weekend in May, I created this whole series of events called DIY Gravel, where I was going to ride the length of the events that I had on my original gravel calendar, but of course doing it socially distanced, isolated, yada, yada, yada. So being that I was in Vermont, I had that bike outfitted, you know, in a really particularly burly way, and went the entire length of the state of Vermont from the Canadian border to the Massachusetts border. It was 310 miles, 90% of it on gravel, and just a burly ride. And it was funny because going into it, Vermont has more gravel roads than we do paved. And so I knew a handful of the segments that I was going to be riding, and I actually thought that I was going to be bringing this cannon to a knife fight. I thought the bike was going to be way more than I needed, but then in reality, it was just the most burly ride that I rode the entire year. So it worked out really well that was the bike I chose. So I don't know. I'll leave it at that. That's my bike of choice. Cannondale Topstone Carbon Lefty.
I have not had a chance to ride the Topstone Lefty. Sounds very fun, but I have my Cannondale Super X with me, and I like the versatility of it. I like that it can feel almost as fast as a road bike, or it's a very capable gravel bike as well. So that's what I've been enjoying.
Perfect answer.
That's good. I know. Yeah, it's definitely like I got my gravel bike for partially to do a little bit of road, but also to get onto the, living in Marin, get on the fire roads a little bit too. And it's been a kind of a good transition. Although I have been very curious, Ted, about the because you're seeing, you know, like I said, the Topstone has a lefty on it. You're seeing some gravel bikes that have front suspension, and many that don't, and some that even have I always forget what it's called, but the rear wheel has a little pivot point, kind of on the top. Do you find that that's it, the king? Yeah, exactly.
Perfect name.
Do you find that the suspension is really beneficial, or what would make you decide between using a lefty or just having like a stiff fork on front?
Yeah, so I received this question a lot. Ted, Cannondale has 2 gravel bikes. Which one do you choose? And for me, if I'm going to do a sporty, racy, really concerned about my time kind of event, then the Super X is the bike that I'm going to be using. And then, you know, more and more, especially, I think it's becoming evident this summer, doing things that involve exploration, that involve going off the beaten path, that involve not knowing where you're going. That's where the lefty and kingpin and having that just a little bit more plush ride really comes to an advantage. And not to be said that you can't race that bike either. I raced that bike at the Rift, Iceland last year. Raced it at Grinduro. And it's cool that you can fit different size wheels, 650B or 700. It's a bit of a wider tire that you can fit in there. So yeah, we are in a really good time for bikes. Like Laura said, you know, the bike is super fast. The Super X is super fast on the road. So yeah, I have slicks. We have slick and knobby tires. I don't want to delve too deep into the nerdy nuance of the mechanics, but there are plenty of times that I'm running slicks on either of the bikes on the road, and you feel like you're riding a road bike. So we are in the golden age of gravel bikes. Ladies and gentlemen, go dabble in gravel.
That's awesome. Yeah. And how would you decide whether or not you want to use like a full suspension mountain bike versus just a gravel bike, like the Topstone, or even one that doesn't have any built-in suspension?
We've had this conversation a lot recently, coincidentally, and if you've never done gravel, so to speak, then I think intuitively you might say, why don't you just ride a mountain bike off-road and call that good enough? And it is amazing what the cycling industry on the manufacturing side has done to make these bikes so capable and so much fun off-road. So yeah, you ride like some bumpy terrain, you think, oh man, this should be a mountain bike, but the wide plush tires, the layup of the carbon, the way that the geometry works out, it's amazing how capable these bikes are. I mean, they are burly machines. So to answer the question explicitly, a full suspension mountain bike, you're going to do that on single track and stuff that you're doing drops and smashing into rocks and so on and so forth. Whereas gravel, you can still bang around like gangbusters, but it's more for the all around gravel roads.
Awesome. Great. And then, so kind of going back to your long ride where you went from the Canadian border to Massachusetts, and just in terms of like any like gravel races and things that either of you have done, what is your nutrition or like your fueling choice on those? If you have one go-to on those guys, what are you choosing? What do you?
Well, coincidentally, I co-own Untapped, where you should all immediately go to a sidebar and go to untapped.cc if you're not familiar with it yet. This is a company that I co-founded in 2014 while racing the Tour de France. My partners are back in Vermont, and we use a foundation of maple syrup as the base carbohydrate so we have packets, we have waffles, and we have a drink mix where we use maple sugar. And the short story there is that maple syrup and maple sugar are loaded with the nutrients that you want, be it amino acids, electrolytes, antioxidants, as opposed to taking a really cheap sugar, which is the broad swath of everything that is sports nutrition, and then supplementing it and adding flavors to it and adding all sorts of really crummy things that don't belong in your sports nutrition. And so truly for the past 5 years, 6 years, Untapped is the only nutrition that I use. It is very easy on your stomach. You know, a lot of people are worried about trying out a new nutrition product and having an upset stomach. I guarantee you will never have a stomach distress. So that's a convenient part. And then it's just absolutely delicious. So as much as I go to the bakery mid-ride to get a nice muffin or scone or something delicious to eat, I look forward to literally every time I reach in my pocket and grab something from Untapped.
Agreed.
Laura has a background in sports nutrition where she worked with two of the globe's biggest sports nutrition brands. And when we first met, she was working for one of them, a Bay Area-based 2-lettered sports nutrition brand that starts with a G and ends in U. Wonderful people over there. And she was very dyed-in-the-wool, the brand. But then it's funny how I've convinced her of the ways of going a more natural, delicious, snackable, organic product.
Well, and it's a product that we eat and drink a lot more often than just in sport. You know, like the lemon tea maple aid, I have hot, especially in the winter, just to drink at home during the daytime. And the waffles are a great on-the-go snack. And we use the maple syrup packets. Well, this whole trip, every time we make oatmeal in the morning, it's open a maple syrup packet, and it's very convenient to have those. Just be travel-friendly maple syrup. So, yeah, it's food that you can feel good about eating all the time, not just during your sport.
And you two are in like the kind of the prime position for it, right there in Vermont, huh? The heart of maple syrup town or area. I'm curious though, Ted, did you before Untapped, would you have like I just picture you like pouring like maple syrup into like a Ziploc bag for going out on your rides? Like, did you use it before Untapped and everything?
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of how the company came to fruition. Is there are a couple of anecdotes like that. There's one massive ride I did with everybody's favorite American pro cyclist, Tim Johnson, where we rode from Burlington, Vermont to Portland, Maine, 200-mile ride. And smack in the middle of that is the Kangamangas Highway, which is a decently long climb. And then you're basically doing 100 miles downhill, net downhill at like 0.0001%, all the way to Portland. And Tim, for whatever reason, was cracking spectacularly. And we had put the ride out on social media. And so a very friendly follower came up with his 2 little kids and gave us each a tall boy of local beer and a pint of maple syrup, which was very kind. That's right. Tim chugged maple syrup, and I don't think he drank the whole pint, but it was amazing over the course of the next hour to see him come back to life. And that was one of the early transformative moments when I realized that maple syrup was more than just for your pancakes. And the other big piece was through social media. While I lived over in Europe, I was living in Spain at the time, and people knew me as the guy who loved maple syrup. So I would step off the team bus at, Tour of Flanders or Paris-Roubaix or the Giro D'Italia, and people would hand me maple syrup, which is incredibly convenient for no shortage of reasons. It was a money saver since I don't have to buy it elsewhere or ship it overseas. And I started taking nips of it before a ride or after a ride, or I put a little bit in a water bottle and dilute it with water. And I'm like, man, it's intuitive. I mean, if I'm going to be taking a gel that has 12 ingredients, a handful of which I can't pronounce, or I can have this one delicious, organic, tasty, super easy to digest, ingest ingredient that's calorically virtually the same, nutritionally superior as a carbohydrate. Long story short, I was like, yo, this is amazing. Let's put this in maple syrup, into a packet. And that began basically a 2-year process where I ended up partnering with my partners at Slopeside Syrup, like you said, in the heart of Vermont. And Untapped was born.
And was, a huge factor in our move to Vermont and choosing to move back to Vermont.
I have one more anecdote in there. True story. So Quebec City and Montreal are these 2 huge end of season races where the entire European peloton comes back to Europe, comes back to North America, I should say. And as a novelty, Canada gives us little glass bottles of maple syrup. And I raced, I'm embarrassed to admit this. I raced this, one of the races with this glass bottle in my pocket, which is horribly dangerous. And I don't recommend doing that, but I took maple syrup and I was like, this is so much better than taking another gel.
That is awesome. See, it's proven right there, right? I mean, you're the case study. You're the hamster right there. You did it.
Exactly.
Um,
And living to tell the story. It works great.
Yeah, and we do sell it at Sports Basement. So we have the waffles, and I think we have the syrup. So definitely, if you had never tried it before, check it out. My personal favorite is the raspberry waffles.
Oh, nice.
That's a good one.
Great choice.
Okay, so another question for you is, like you mentioned that gravel, you both mentioned that gravel riding is kind of on the up and up right now. Obviously, we have a lot of road cyclists throughout the Bay Area, and I've seen this from being in store myself. You know, people they're interested in trying gravel, but they are still a little bit hesitant because it is different. What suggestions or what advice do you have for somebody that maybe is like a classic road cyclist and they're looking to move on to a gravel bike to make them a little more comfortable to do so?
Milady.
I mean, the biggest draws to me to convince someone to try gravel are just the more laid back nature, the community vibe, like I said. Often the races have a great kind of festival atmosphere afterwards, which we really have a lot of fun enjoying that. And with our race, Route of Vermont, that's something that we promote the party afterwards as much as we spend as much time focusing on that as we do the ride. But I'll just speak especially for women specifically. In Vermont, our local bike shop is selling they're selling women's gravel bikes faster than any other bike in the shop. And I think that speaks to those factors that I just brought up, but also just to, I don't know, the warm, welcoming vibe that I haven't always seen in road racing. And it's just, the attitude of like, run what you brung. There's no right bike that you have to have or right look. You can show up with your baggies on and a flannel. You can show up in spandex. And, there are a lot of resources available for women to learn the ins and outs of gravel. And that's something I've tried to spend a lot of time this summer working on, along with there's a website called Girls Gone Gravel. And we did a DIY summer webinar series where we just, there were 9 episodes where each episode was, from mental tips and tactics to what kind of gear you should look for and what are the different types of gear, what are the different types of events, sports nutrition talk, every kind of essential that you might that might help you get started. And yeah, that's just been my experience thus far, is that it's this very welcoming category where there are a lot of resources if you want to go really deep into it. And if you don't, there are a lot of, in Vermont, we have a women's gravel ride where you can just show up and no matter your ability and learn from other people as well. So that's what I would say to the female crowd.
And I would say, to your specific question of the roadies who are interested in coming to gravel, you're welcome to, but I'm a product of domestic American road racing, and I'm a huge proponent in domestic American road racing, and domestic American road racing is suffering badly. So maybe my answer is don't come to gravel, keep road racing strong. It's cool to see how many people are migrating to gravel in the first place, but it is meant to be a really fun thing as much as there are competitive aspects to it. So I'm still psyched with road racers being road racers, and I think that is important to a strong cycling culture as well.
Cool. Good advice from both of you. Definitely. And just to be clear, we are certainly not advocating giving up on road racing for the gravel, but
No.
But yeah, it's it is a fun, it's definitely a different experience out there. Laura, you mentioned Rooted Vermont. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah. We moved to Vermont and in 2018
maybe.
And that we moved there in the summer, and then that fall I think through social media, a lot of people we're riding a lot of great dirt roads. Ted obviously had a very strong following after winning Dirty Kanza of gravel aficionados. And so we had a lot of requests or inquiries, when are you guys going to start an event? And it was only after we would get those requests or questions and kind of think, oh yeah, that would be fun to do someday. But really everything just in our life lined up to make that possible. And we decided that if we were going to have an event, we really wanted to pour a lot of time and energy into it. And so everything came together. We named it Rooted because we were feeling so rooted in the community of Vermont, and it's a very special place. It's a place where, we move in and people drop the things that they're doing to help us move, bring housewarming gifts. It's just, we were really touched by the people there. And we really wanted to show off everything that Vermont is about, whether it's like great IPA or maple creamies, which is like a famous maple soft serve ice cream, the great roads, the amazing cheese, the farm fresh food. So we just kept thinking of every component that we really wanted to integrate into this event. And we put it together. We launched it in January of 2019 and sold out registration. First year we had about 550 because we wanted to make sure we could deliver a great event. And then last year was our inaugural event, and we really felt like it couldn't have gone any better. We had an amazing time. We have a really cool video on YouTube that I think sums it all up. The best part is everyone cheering in the last finisher. We were not, when COVID hit in March, we really thought by August, trying to stay positive, thinking everything was still going to be okay. And so we were sad to have to cancel this year, but that's just kind of been the state of the union for all events this year. So we're looking forward to 2021, and we don't know what the future holds, but we're hopeful, and we continue to just try and build on what we have established thus far and make it better. So it's always the first weekend in August, and we would love to have you out. We'll open registration again November 1st. There won't be as many slots this year just because so many people rolled theirs over, but we will have a small amount that we'll be able to offer on November 1st.
And I would definitely recommend for anyone watching, if you haven't watched the YouTube video, it looks like just a beautiful ride. Good kind of variation of like different gravels you're on too, and that's awesome. That's great. That's great. You got 550 the first year out and everything. What are the different like distances and elevation gains that are available? I'm certainly, I think 80 miles was like the big one. And
I get first things first. The type of terrain we have in Vermont, our dirt roads are, like Ted said, we have more dirt roads than paved. So our dirt roads are actually pretty smooth dirt. And then we have what are called class 4 roads, which are unmaintained kind of Jeep roads that can be pretty gnarly, sometimes almost borderline mountain bike. A mountain bike is sometimes preferred. So we have a little bit of class 4, but majority being just these pretty darn smooth dirt roads. And yes, we have an 82 mile and a 48 mile. And Vermont is, at least the area that we are in, is lots of punchy climbing. So it's not easy terrain. So we have 8,000 feet of climbing in the long distance, and we have about 4 in the shorter. So although that may, you know, when we were developing the course, it seemed a little shorter compared to some other iconic gravel events out there, it's pretty taxing. So definitely need to train some short, steep hills before you come on out.
Well, there's some good ones out here in the Bay Area in case if you do want to train and get ready for next August. Cool. And then let's see. We have a good amount of questions. Yeah.
Fire some questions our way. Because Hazel might be losing.
Yeah. Gotta keep her attention. It's the young generation, right? So
yeah, that's right.
First thing is not a question, but a request. Got Raymond says that we need more King of the Ride podcasts, and he says you're a great interviewer.
Oh my God. So, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Check us out, King of the Ride podcast. 70 some odd, 60 some odd episodes. When Hazel was first born, I thought I was going to be able to maintain the one episode every week or two cadence, and turns out parenthood is time consuming, believe it or not. We did record one on this trip. We had talked about recording one with each other on this trip. So, loyal listener, thank you very much. Stay tuned. We will have more. I appreciate your patience.
Good news. Good news for everybody there.
Yeah.
Got a question here. Have you, the two of you, ever ridden in any like tandem competition? And would you ever do that?
That's a great question. No, we haven't. It'd be fun to dabble in tandeming.
I think that's the only time, the only consideration of riding in tandem would be if we were to do some sort of event where we just wanted to like hammer together. But most part, I think we like riding our own bikes.
Yeah. Short answer, no.
I don't want to be in the back. Well, I don't want to be in the front either. I just want to ride my own bike.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. You know, you guys are, it's funny too, because you see, you definitely see like there's tandem options in some rides, and on the one hand you think, oh, is that just like kind of a gimmick? But then you think like, oh, that sounds incredibly difficult. Like there's so much more to think about when you have somebody else controlling another aspect. But next question here. Which of the two of you will Everest first, and who will be faster?
Oh, no question with that.
I coincidentally, I Everested during the DIY gravel Dirty Kanza Vermont XL edition. So by going the entire length of Vermont, you're going to tally 34,000 feet of climbing in just 20 hours. Okay. So I have inadvertently Everested. I've considered doing it again, but gosh, that is a tall order. Hats off to anybody who has Everested or even considered Everesting.
Yeah, it's quite a feat.
Yeah, Laura's non-response sort of indicative of interest.
My answer would be I love doing big hard challenges. I could foresee a situation in which I might be drawn to that, but I don't know. There are just so many more inspiring rides to be done. So
yeah,
feels like a
byproduct of like a great ride you were doing anyways. It wouldn't be bad, but question here says there are so many opinions on 650 or 700 as well as different widths. What do you think is the optimal wheel size and tire width? And they said, since we're not all sponsored and but have the funds to buy both.
I am a firm believer in both. There is something of simplicity in using 700s just because there is more of a standardization there. So that's relative to wheel size. Width, the widest tire that you can run is the best tire that you can run. not to make it a sponsor plea too hard, I work with Renee Hare's Tires, and they basically have two tires. They have a slick tire and they have a knobby tire, and then in a whole variety of widths. So basically I say, if you're going to ride something gnarly and you need some knob, then you get the knobby tire and get the widest tire you can. And the same thing with a slick. Get a slick tire and the widest tire you can. What's awesome about modern tire technology is you can run super low tire pressures and use tubeless sealant, and just the grip, whether you're using knob or slick, the grip is outstanding. I mean, it's something we've never seen before. So flip a coin, whether you get a 650 or 700C, and then get the widest tire you can, and you'll be a happy camper. Right, Hazel?
Awesome.
Right.
Yeah. Do you ever use a dropper post on your gravel bike, or have you ever considered it or tried it? Or
I've considered it. I've never done it. I wasn't skeptical, but I was a slow adopter to a dropper on a mountain bike, and it's not night and day, but it makes for a more fun experience. I'm certainly not opposed, and yeah, I guess at this point it's merely a matter of time.
Question here for and I've had issues with this before too. Getting the kind of the courage up to corner on a gravel bike sometimes can be a little nerve-wracking. Do you have any any recommendations or tips of the trade to work on that?
The question about tire pressure is a perfect segue. The lower pressure, I think there's a natural, there's a tendency to run way higher pressure than you need. So there are a lot of great guides. Zip has a really nice guide for tire pressure, just recommended pressure based on height, weight, and width of the tire you're running. So yeah, basically have huge faith in running lower pressures, and that'll allow you to have more confidence diving into corners. And then I suppose practice as much as anything. I mean, there's there's stuff to be said about counterweight. There's stuff to be said about knowing the terrain you're on. Are you on really soft, dusty stuff like you're going to have on Mount Tam that's like dusty, rocky, pretty slick, and you don't, it's high consequence. You're going to fall in that kind of thing. So yeah, you don't want to learn by trial and error, because error is going to hurt. Whereas you go to other parts of the state or other parts of the country or world, and there's really loamy stuff that you can dive into corner and the ground's going to grip no matter what you do. So practice, and run low pressures, and you will enjoy your bike riding and cornering.
I was like, it's good advice there. This is a question actually for Ted, your brother Robbie. What's he up to? Is he still cycling, like road gravel?
Robbie is the fastest cyclist on zero training. My brother is a recent med school graduate. He's in Portland, Maine. He is doing residency at Maine Med. He still gets out on a bike, I don't know, maybe once or twice a week. He would really benefit from a gravel bike, because a gravel bike is such a one bike fits all needs. And he's still on like his 2007, or no, I guess it's later than that, probably 2009, really nice titanium independent fabrication bike. But he's running 21C tires, and I'm like, dude, literally my tires are 2 or 3 times wider than your tires. So yeah, Robbie is a force to be reckoned with, and a freak of nature, and a wonderful human, and saving lives. So Robbie's doing great.
Hey.
All right, shout out Robbie there. Got a question here. It says, could you ask you guys if you have names for your bikes? He says, my dad's bike's name is Lava, and Lava is a Super X too, and their cousin's bike name is Shadow, and that's a Topstone. So you have names for your rides?
I'm certainly not opposed in any way to naming your bike. I have just never named a bike. I just don't think I've ever named a bike.
What about the sticker you had on your bike that was like the bear or the lobster or something?
Oh, Laura, in 2014 Tour de France, we had really cool custom paint jobs by Cannondale on our Super 6s. And we were tasked to choose an animal. And at first I wanted to be the lobster. I was a sole American on Liquid Gas, a very Italian team. And I love lobster, but then I'm like, okay, the lobster is like the cockroach of the sea, and it's not a real sexy animal, but I love the lobster. So then I did some research, and I found that the grizzly bear is unique only to North America. I'm like, well, I'm unique to this team, and I'm the only North American. And so I went with the grizzly bear. So I don't call that bike the grizzly bear. I call it my 2014 Tour de France bike. But yeah, that's as close as I get to naming.
I remembered it had a sticker with a name on it. So that was close. I've never named a bike either.
All right.
So,
It's, you know, I feel like it's harder to move on from a bike if you got a name on it, right? But if you need to upgrade and you're like, oh, but that's old, you know, that's old Shelly, or that's old Bill. Like, I can't just give him up. It's
right.
It's more,
it's like renaming a boat. Yeah.
Yeah. I got so someone here I have she said Lauren says she's about to hit the road with a baby and a toddler in a van. She also got a few Cannondales, so she's asking about any tips that you can give. I think you mentioned the white noise machine earlier.
Yes, we have a little traveling white noise machine. You know, we have it's not a pack and play brand, it's something similar. But just Hazel being in the same bed, no matter, you know, just having her bed is helpful for sleeping. I don't know. What other tips do we have?
I mean, I imagine most people who are listening are of the same.
Yeah.
I mean, just being incredibly precautionary. Inevitably, we are doing this trip to meet people and family and friends, and just having understanding what your walls are beforehand, I think, is important. Bring a ton of, this is relative to COVID.
Yeah.
Bring a ton of hand sanitizer for obvious reasons. But I mean, prefacing what I was saying there is just, you know, inevitably people want to hold your child. So be bold and have boundaries beforehand. And then go back to my original tip, try to do a weekend trip before you're going to do a 7-week adventure wagon. And not to say that I would pack much differently, but I think it just helps peace of mind.
And this isn't so much a tip as just my observation of, like, it's just so cool to take a baby on the road, and we're introducing her to so many first experiences, whether it's like she got a life jacket and she went kayaking the other day and she's swimming in all these different bodies of water, and
it is her bedtime.
She just is becoming adaptable. Like, for the most part, yeah, we try to keep her on a schedule, but you can't do that. And you can only do your best when you're on a road trip. And so, yeah, like right now, it's dinner time.
She is very well behaved, but she's hungry and tired.
But it's fun. Like, she won't remember any of this, but we're going to, you know, make a book and be able to tell her stories about all the things she did in her first year of life. And it's a special thing to do as a family. And I know we had a few people say, oh, you're crazy to be taking a baby on such a big trip. But it's been pretty positive. So I'd say do it. But sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're on their schedule, like right now.
Another first for her too. Our first live interview. 5 months old. She's getting checking all the boxes off, huh?
She's doing it all.
What for in terms of for a gravel bike, like what kind of frame would you like recommend? Like, would you go carbon, or would you go steel, aluminum, or do you have a preference there?
I prefer carbon personally. Cannondale makes really nice carbon bikes, and they make really nice aluminum bikes, and my cleanest answer is just getting out and trying it. I mean, that doesn't mean go buy 3 different bike materials and hop on the first one that works for you. But the whole point of gravel is this, like, Franken bike. You know, you get on a bike and you go for a ride and see what works. And so, yeah, if you're if you're price conscious and aluminum bike is in your budget, then do that. If you have a little bit more to spend, then a carbon bike is an awesome way to do it.
Cool. And I got one here from Rosso. Says, what's the one bike that you no longer have but you wish you still did?
Oh wow, probably my very first bike. Well, and then that's a two-part answer. My very first bike, that I got when I was probably 3 years older than Hazel is now. That would be really nice to still have. And then my first ever road bike was a really great Cannondale R500 that I adopted from my brother. So that'd be a great one. But yeah, the garage seems to only be collecting more and more bikes.
Cool. For when you ride gravel, do you use the same same style of clipless pedals that you do on the road, or do you use something different, like do you use SPDs, or do you go egg beaters or something? Or
depending on, if there are plenty of gravel rides that I know I'm not going to unclip, and then I will use my road shoes and road pedals. If you're going to be walking around, obviously having a mountain bike shoe is going to be a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more adaptable if you're going to be stepping in dirt or mud or over water or walking, to the convenience store. So yeah, I guess I don't have a gravel specific pedal. My same mountain bike pedal is my gravel pedal, and that gets the job done.
all right. Let's see. I got both of you back here. We'll finish up with one more. What you guys planning on having any more kiddos anytime soon?
Anytime soon? She's 5 months old, so no.
Not soon, but
There is no telling. Potentially, yes.
I'll say Hazel, if we were gauging it off of Hazel, she's just been like such a joy and such an easygoing, happy baby that she would definitely make one want another child. But then you don't know if you're going to get one just like her. So we'll see.
Seems like you got a pretty good track record so far with her. She seems.
Welcome.
Well, thank you guys so much for making time with us during your road trip vacation out there camping and everything. This has been such a pleasure. I think everyone got some real good anecdotes and information about their gravel bikes. Is there any parting words you want to give us about any of your products, anything you got going on, anything you want to promote coming up? Or
no, I just say follow along at I am Ted King, be it any social media, Ted King, Laura Cameron King on the Instagram. We do it is a hamster wheel of content, so it is fun to produce it, and we hope that you all enjoy what we're putting out there.
Well, thanks for having us.
Oh, absolutely, anytime. And you always want to come back, and that goes for you too, Hazel. So it's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of your evening out there camping in Flagstaff, and maybe we'll do this again sometime soon. Thanks so much.
That'd be awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.